Sorry, I'm sing-songy, but that's also from Kezia's Music Together class, which I miss. I miss that. I miss ballet. I miss baseball. But anyways, hello everybody. So glad to see you. Okay, hi guys. Sorry, I'm not fully with it today. We are making cookies. Welcome back to Wake Up with the Walkers, but it's just me today. I'll try to get these into the oven before children come running in so that I can actually walk you guys through a recipe. I know they're very entertaining, but it's always a little hard to follow at the same time, but that's the point of those. So we are on day 63, 63, 62, 63-ish, something like that, of shelter in place. Just heard yesterday that Los Angeles County has been extended to July 1st. Really hoping that we don't have the same, but if it is, then so be it, and we will keep coming live to you and making recipes and making memories. I just am curious, where are you watching from and what day is it for you? Or if you don't count because that just makes it too difficult for you, then just say I don't have a count. But tell us where you're from. Tell us if you're still sheltered in place. I know there's a lot of states that have allowed some opening. If you're in California, you're like us, but yeah, I'm just curious. So real deal chocolate chip cookies as you're answering, and then I'll say hi to some of you guys. Probably the first recipe, along with my sandwich bread, both from this recipe, or this book, both published on my original blog. I think at one point, I don't even remember the names, but it was againstallgrain.blogspot or WordPress, I think. But those were the two recipes, I believe, that brought a lot of you guys over to my page. And so they became so popular that I had to publish them in here. And those cookies have garnered their own Instagram hashtag. It's long, real deal chocolate chip cookies. But they were dubbed that after people tried them and felt like they tasted like the Toll House originals. Nestle Toll House. Sorry, Ryan and I are friends, dorks. Anyways, so we're gonna make those today. I pretty much always keep them stocked. They taste better frozen almost than they do fresh, actually warm or frozen, like fresh out of the oven or frozen. I found that out because I started sticking them in the freezer to try not to eat them and realized that that doesn't work because they're equally as delicious, if not more, because the chocolate gets crunchy. And grain-free cookies, when they're made with almond flour and coconut flour, don't really get like rock hard solid in the freezer. They just get a little bit more chewy and they end up being quite delicious. So take it from me, if you are trying not to eat the entire dozen in one sitting, don't put them in the freezer because it doesn't. By the way, I'm doubling. You can't hear me, can they? I'm like, oh, Instagram can.
I can hear you now.
Okay, good. So I'm doubling this recipe. I don't know what they last heard, but what I was saying is that if you want to use unsalted butter in this, if you can tolerate it, I suggest grass-fed. And I would do 3 tablespoons instead of a 1/4 cup. I am doubling this recipe, so I just put in a 1/2 cup of palm shortening. And get some eggs. Gosh, you'd think I would have this recipe memorized. I almost do. I I've written about 800 to 900 recipes, maybe over 1,000 now. So memorizing them is not always going to happen, but this one I do normally know. It's a 1/4 cup of palm shortening, 1 egg, a 1/4 cup of coconut sugar, 2 tablespoons of honey. Hold on, I'm like thinking down in my head here. 2 tablespoons of coconut flour or a 1/4 cup? 2 tablespoons and 1.5 cups of almond flour. Anyways, it's one of those ones that's pretty easy, and when you have made it as often as we do, it's definitely one that is memorized. Oh man, my coconut sugar is hard as a rock. Okay, so we are doubling this, like I mentioned, because we go through them. My helpers are back. Can you go let them know that we're going and that they can come in, but we can't interrupt mommy. Okay, so because we're doubling this, I need 1/2 cup of coconut sugar. So I used coconut sugar in this recipe to sub in for like a brown sugar that you would normally find in a good old chocolate chip cookie. And let's talk about machinery for a second before my helpers come in, so I can get one more thing out of the way. I like to use a food processor because it finely grinds the sugars and the flours, which gives these such a great consistency and more similar to a standard cookie. Hi, honey. You can come get a stool and come in, but you guys can't eat your lunch while we're on the video, okay? You guys can come in, but why don't you wait and eat your lunch in a minute? All right. So stand mixer will work just fine. You can also just mix these together by hand, the good old-fashioned way. They just will be a tiny bit more grainy, but not a big deal. Do our honey. My massive tub of honey is getting low, believe it or not. I'm telling you, with the amount of baking that we've been doing during quarantine, and then also with the amount of testing that I do of recipes, I actually go through 15 pounds of honey, which is what this is. Hi. Kind of surprisingly quickly. So we're gonna have to order another one of these. But I love this honey. Any honey will work in this recipe. I just really love that this one is raw and creamy. It's actually Canadian, but it is from same brand as that palm shortening. It's Tropical Traditions. It just has such a wonderful, mild flavor that doesn't make everything you make taste like honey. Hi, sweetie. And so it's my favorite to work with. But the regular old little plastic bear of honey that you can get anywhere will work just as well. Okay. So we've got that. We use our vanilla.
Can I help?
Yes, of course you can. We need to put our egg in as well. So I'm gonna go 4 teaspoons of vanilla extract because we're doubling. That was a 1/4 cup of honey. Mom is gonna do the eggs, and then how about you put the lid on and you can start it for me. Brian, tell us where some people are from.
Oh man, all over the world.
What day they're on. Because I know it's different depending on where you live and when you're.
We have people from Montreal, Canada, Melody. We have
Hi, Melody.
Germany.
Wonderful. Did you guys know that 2 of my cookbooks are printed in German? It's pretty fun to see. The first time I saw it, I didn't even know it was going to happen, and it caught me off guard because it was some old photo, not old, it's just with like an outtake from the book. So, hello to Germany. All right, mister, here we go. You want to put this on? Yeah, that page is falling out because we make these so often. Okay, mister, let's see. Go ahead. Wait, hold on. It's actually already on. Do we have any day counts? Is anybody higher than us? 60 at 63, California? No?
I don't know.
I'm just curious. I don't think anybody is, but it was already on. Sorry. Okay, here. Why don't you do this? Can you measure out one of those for me? And keep it in there and slide that off the cover. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to scrape down the side here. So I added 2 eggs. These do work with an egg substitute, just so you know. My preferred egg substitute for this one would be freshly ground flax, whisked together with, oh, it's a little hard because it's getting low there, huh? Whisked together with boiling water. Come in. Can Daddy help you maybe with your stool?
Good.
Do you need me to help you fill that up, sweets? Here she comes. Okay, we're getting close. Here, watch. Let's do this.
Can I do this one?
Of course. And then can you use your finger and go straight across?
Mommy.
Yes, Bubba.
Can I mix, Mom?
No, honey, no mix, but I'm gonna have you measure in our almond flour. Okay, East, can you add that right in? Thank you, sir.
Can I do the chocolate next?
You guys can totally both help me with that chocolate. I think I know why you want to help me with it. Okay, sister.
Because we like eating it.
I thought so. Okay, this is our finely ground almond flour. It is blanched, which just means that the skins, well, it means that it's blanched, which means that they were boiled briefly, but the skins are off. So, you know, we need all of it. Here, watch. Let me help you, and then you can measure it off, okay? Or you can level it off. Okay, there we go. And so the finer the grind, the better. My favorite brand
Mom,
is Welby's.
We don't do.
Yeah, you did it perfectly. Just straight across, exactly. And then I'm gonna have you do 1/2 more for me. But I have found the Costco brand is actually quite great. I also like the Thrive Market one. There's actually a lot that work really well. You're gonna do it. We don't need a whole cup though. This one we only need it. Oh, actually, no, we do need a whole cup. I doubled. We need 3 of these. Hold on. Let me help you get it and you can level it off again for me. Wait. We're gonna run out of almond flour. I think I might have 1 more bag in the freezer. Okay, go ahead and level it for me. Are there any questions?
Yeah, so Holly's actually going to be making your homemade Play-Doh. What brand of rice flour do you recommend?
I like Bob's Red Mill. I find it was the most affordable one I found, and then it just was the most consistent for me when I was able to like find it in the grocery store, and that's what we tested it with. But honestly, any white nothing like that. Any white rice flour should be good. I had a whole 10 minutes of, we don't need that, we don't need that, we don't want to. Here, keep just dumping it back in here and you can keep practicing with leveling it, okay? How about that? Okay, we had a whole 10 minutes of silence to ourselves, but that went away. Oops, sorry. Did I just get you in the nose? Okay, sister,
Wait, can I practice leveling? I want to do this. Can I practice
Hold on,
leveling?
dump this out, wait, dump this out. You could do this, ready? Watch.
Can I practice leveling?
Use this one. Ryan, why are you sitting over there? Is something off? Something wrong?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit of salt. I love salty, sweet. Oh, good, that's perfect. So
Mommy, can I
level.
measure?
Yes, hold on. Actually, half of it dumped out on me, but that's okay. Okay, level that off. Just 1 more of those and that's it. Okay, here we go. Dump it all in. There.
I want to practice, Mommy.
You practice this.
What's this?
Okay, good.
What's this, Mom?
So good. I'm watching, but do it into the jar. Into the jar. Good.
Can I practice leveling, Mom?
Yeah, you practice. Good. You practice leveling.
I'm going to do it.
Put your hand into my armpits. Okay, lay it straight down and then it's chocolate time. Okay, let's be done with that. You did such a good job practicing. I said no more, babe. Oh my gosh, you guys. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. Y'all are crazy. I feel like when I watch these back, it's just me talking to you guys and like going like this, like blocking things constantly, like just, it's like that mom, you know, no more. Okay, you guys are, and now that I'm laughing at you, you're gonna just keep going because you think it's hilarious. Okay, stand up. All over the place today. This is what baking with children is like, am I right? Okay, anyways, You know those mom instincts where you can just like see out of your 8 eyes and see them doing something that's going to be catastrophic, but somehow we can still talk and parent and like just catch it. I just feel like there's been so many times where I'm just like catching things in the air. But it is like, okay, sister, chocolate time. If you keep messing around, you're going to miss it. All right, so let's talk about chocolate. Oh, wait, hold on. The chocolate is important. I have always been a fan of mixing chocolate. I think maybe like 10 or 12 years ago, I watched some show on the Food Network. I think it might have been, no, you're gonna do these ones, come over here. I think it might have been Throwdown with Bobby Flay, which used to be one of my favorites. And the people he was going up against made chocolate chip cookies, and they used a dark chocolate and a milk chocolate. And I think I tried it one time and was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It just makes the cookies like more than two-dimensional, but I don't know, when there's just one type of chocolate, it's great, they're fine, it's chocolate still. But when there's a mix of the different cacao percentages, there's just something so delicious about it. So I always use a very dark, like an 80%. These are fantastic if you haven't tried them yet. And then I always use, like these are Enjoy Life, the kids really like them, they're minis, they're a little higher in the sugar content. And then these are Guittard dark chocolate chips, and I believe these are 75%. So another option to keep this fully, okay, go ahead guys, keep putting handfuls in. To keep these fully refined sugar-free, you can get your favorite, well, actually these are refined sugar-free, but you can grab your favorite bar. Hue Chocolate's my favorite. They use coconut sugar, there's no dairy, and so you could just chop that up, and then you can fully control what you're putting in terms of the sweetness of the chocolate.
We're running out of chocolate.
I know, that's okay. We can keep putting all of it in. All right, I'm gonna take the blade out in a second, and then we're just gonna mix this in by hand, and then we'll scoop, and then we're done. It was definitely, we've talked about renaming the show from Wake Up with the Walkers to Chaotic Kitchen because it is definitely that every day, but it's fun. Okay, good job. All right, are there any other questions? Because we are going to show just very quickly how I like to do these on the baking sheet, and then we'll be done.
Wait, how does it?
Hold on.
So someone was asking, just to clarify, the coconut oil, would they come out the same?
No, they will come out slightly different. Mostly just that they. What's going on, you guys? What are you doing?
I'm looking for another one of these for Red.
Oh, so they just will come out a little less cakey, a little bit more flat, and I do find that they get a little bit crispier. So,
Daddy's putting that chocolate in the bowl.
Yes, of course she is. All right, why don't you guys go and eat your chocolate over on the counter? And
Yeah, so those are the Hue gems.
yes, they were. Okay, so I actually do prefer to bake these on parchment paper. I feel like they stick a bit to a silk hat, surprisingly, because it's silicone. But we're gonna use that today because I just ran out of parchment, although I think I have some somewhere else. I usually end up with like 5 of those at once. But let me show you my favorite way to flatten these. So a lot of grain-free cookies do not flatten on their own. It's just the kind of, the palm shortening is part of that. Like I said, it takes a while to melt. But the coconut flour also kind of keeps them from spreading. It just depends on the recipe you're using. Usually if there's one of mine, and I will tell you that you need to flatten them. And this is one of those. So let me give a quick mix.
I'm just trying to get it more chocolate.
Oh my gosh, you guys. Okay, go sit at the counter with Dad and go eat your chocolate. That's one way to get the camera back to myself. Just give him chocolate. It's only 11:20. That's okay. It's not that bad. The other night I was having a pretty emotional day, and nope. The rest of these going in the cookies. And they asked for hot cocoa like right before dinner, and I was like, yep, you know what? Why not? Anything goes in quarantine. Just sit with Dad. Okay. Or you can just stay in because you're cute. Okay, so my chocolate is mixed in. I'm usually one to add a bit of extra chocolate at the end. You're now, yeah. As soon as I laugh at them, they just continue because they think it's funny. I'm usually one to add a bit of chocolate towards the end of the dough just because I always find the bottom is slightly lacking and everybody picks around the cookie that doesn't have enough chocolate. So if you don't have a cookie scoop, get one. This makes everything so easy. There's so many different sizes. I tend to make these cookies a bit smaller for the kids because I double the batch and it's just an easy way to control the portion size and the sugar. Sometimes we just do minis, which are kind of our favorite thing to keep on hand. But let me show you the way that I flatten these because I get a lot of people asking. So our dough is a tiny bit sticky, but I think we're gonna be okay. We'll try it. So I like to put a piece of parchment over top and then just take a heavy flat bottom measuring cup, just like this, and just go around and flatten them out. You don't have to make them like pancake thin. They will spread ever so slightly, but flattening them in advance like this just kind of helps give them a head start. Otherwise, they really will just bake up like little mountains. So I had a feeling I didn't let it sit long enough. So the coconut flour is what absorbs a lot of this moisture. If you're finding that your dough is sticking a lot like this, first of all, you can kind of just gently pull like I did. But you can also just let the dough sit for another few minutes and that coconut flour will start to dry that dough out a little bit more. It just takes some time for it to absorb some of the liquid. We can also just use a spatula and scrape that off. So these are ready to go in. I have my oven preheated to 350. They bake for about 10 minutes. Also, if you like them to spread a bit more and to become a bit more soft and cakey on the top, you can lower your oven to 325 and bake them for a bit longer, about 15 to 17 minutes. That's another option too. It just kind of depends how you like them. So I'm going to throw these in. Are there any other questions before we sign off?
Yeah, actually, Dina has a question. How would you change the baking time to make a chocolate or cookie cake out of this recipe?
Oh, I've done it. So we've done it. We've done it as like a pizookie. So this is a double. I probably wouldn't try to bake the double. I would just do a single batch. Put it into a cast iron skillet, and it doesn't actually take that much longer because it's still quite thin. I think it was probably about 15. I would check it at 15 and see if it's golden on top, and if you put a fork or a toothpick in the middle and it comes out clean, then you're probably good. Although, quite honestly, no matter what, it's gonna taste delicious, and I think a pizookie is kind of good with a little bit more on the doughy side. Your eggs will have cooked, so you shouldn't need to worry about that. But yeah, I would say about 15.
And then did you put it in a Silpat?
I did end up using a Silpat, but like I mentioned, I actually prefer to bake this one on parchment paper. I don't know why, but on the Silpat, for some reason, they just have a bit of a hard time coming off. If you let them cool all the way and you use a good spatula, you should be able to clear it, but I do like parchment, and I do like the unbleached. If You Care brand is the one that I usually use. I just sometimes will get these when I'm testing a lot because it's just such a massive thing that we go through.
And then Mary's asking, is there a way to make these without almond flour?
So this one, you can do ground sunflower seed flour. I would just either omit or reduce the baking soda so they don't turn green. There's also another fully nut-free recipe in my Meals Made Simple cookbook. That's my second cookbook. And that one uses tahini, and it's modeled kind of after this. They're a little bit different, but that would just be my suggestion, is to not try to sub flours. Unless you can have, unless you can have nuts. Still, cashew flour is a great one-for-one sub of almond flour. No, not.
And then Kelly's actually asking, have you ever tried tiger nut flour?
Yeah, I have. I don't really care for it that much. It's got a funny crunch to it that I just was never able to get past. I tested a lot of recipes with it probably like 6 years ago when it kind of was first getting popular. It's just not my favorite. I didn't love the way it performed. Plus, I found a lot of people had trouble finding it, and it's kind of expensive. But in terms of if it's a one-for-one sub, I'm not entirely sure. The tiger nut, in case you're wondering why they're asking it, that's actually not a nut, and so a lot of people who can't have nuts can use that in recipes. Anything else? Okay. All right, guys. This recipe, while it is in Against All Grain, for my very first book, it's also on the blog. So if you don't have a copy of this book, just go grab it. We put a link in Facebook, and I'll do a swipe up later. Okay. Bye, everybody. See you later.
Mom,
Yes.
now what can do?